recording on your side. Just let me know when you start so I can get the timing going.
Already. Here we go. Welcome to this special edition of Go Vote Omaha, a candidate forum for Omaha Public Schools District 3, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Candid Villard, a League Administrator and the moderator of this forum. The League never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. The format is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. We alternate speaking order throughout the forum. A timekeeper will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum, the candidates flipped a coin to determine the initial speaking order. I will introduce them now in that order. They are 2 candidates running for Omaha Public Schools District 3. They are Alex P. Gates and Nick Thielen. First, we will begin with opening statements. Alex Gates, you may begin.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight. It's a really great opportunity. My name is Alex Gates. My wife Jamie and I have 4 kids in OPS in 4 different buildings. Actually, we've got a 1st grader, a 3rd grader, a 7th grader, and a 9th grader. I grew up in Iowa and attended public schools my entire life, K through college. I've been an active OPS parent for the last 9 years, leading PTAs and PTOs, serving on advisory committees, teaching after-school enrichment programs, attending board meetings, and just being an active parent. I'm on record advocating for better teacher pay, smaller class sizes, more recess and unstructured play for our young students. This long history of involvement and experience has earned me the endorsement of the Omaha Education Association, which I'm very proud of. Professionally, I'm a technology entrepreneur. I create custom software for businesses to nonprofits, allowing them to utilize modern technology and have greater efficiency. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I love Omaha. I love public schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nick Thielen, you may begin.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum. My name is Nick Thielen, and I'm running for OPS Board of Education to make sure that our schools provide a foundation for success for every student in our city. I've worked into my own small business, a large local law firm, as part of the management team for a local business with over 500 employees. And looking back, I can see the advantages I had growing up that made it possible for me to get where I am today. It's this sort of understanding that I've been fortunate and had help along the way that has driven me to advocate for the kids of our community over the last decade. As a volunteer, a board member, and a supporter of several organizations in Omaha, including Project Harmony, CSI, Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance, and the Foster Care Review Organization. Last year, that drive to support kids crystallized as my oldest daughter prepared to enter kindergarten, and she's now at Dundee Elementary. I want to make OPS the best it can be for my daughters and for every child in Omaha. I'm not a career politician. I've never run for office before. For me, it's just time to step up and do my part and put my skills and experience to work for the students of OPS. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move into question 1. How do you view the decision to postpone the start of sports season for OPS? Nick Thielen, you may begin.
You know, I think that there's a lot that went into these decisions. These are really immensely difficult, and I'm not inclined to second guess the administration, but I do have some thoughts. You know, first, the school board should be having more transparent conversations and making more transparent decisions about return to school and sports. You know, I've been at every school board meeting since last September, and the board has rarely had the kind of frank conversations out in the open about its concerns or intentions, especially regarding return to school and sports and COVID in general. And second, but related, and it goes to the kind of the understanding of the board's role. The board should be asking the administration what procedures the district's operations professionals can put in place to make sports and schools safe. They should be asking the medical community what it has to say about the risks It should be asking, child psychology experts and the district's curriculum professionals what they say about what's going to be lost by, not having sports or going remote. And they should be asking the district's technology professionals, in the case of schools, what they can do to make remote learning reliable and effective model for education. But these are the roles really of the superintendent and the staff. But there's no expert that can tell the board or the schools, when's the right time to have sports when you weigh all of those things together. That's the board's role, and that's the judgment that the board members have been elected to exercise. And so OPS is in a difficult position. It really, I'm not inclined to second guess the administration on these issues. I think they've done a good job.
Thank you. Alex P. Gates.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the district made the right call there. And I say that as a father of a cross-country runner. She's on the swim team, and she's a soccer player as well. The safety of our students and teachers is paramount. And I believe in science and data, and I trust those professionals for their guidance that way. That being said, I understand what sports does for the climate of a school. It is oftentimes the main reason or motivator for some kids to really get to school and have a positive attitude and be there. I understand school spirit and the impact that it has. I am looking forward to the spring. It's been discussed that we'll be able to play fall sports in the spring, and I think that's a great compromise. But really, I agree with what the district decided to do with sports. It's just incredibly important that we're data-driven and that we listen to the experts on this and really look out for the safety of our students and our teachers and the parents and the entire community.
Thank you. Question 2. This summer, a group of alumni and students at Omaha Central made a list of demands regarding changes to curriculum as it relates to representation and inclusion. How would you respond to them, and what would you propose?
I think this is great, and what the group has done is really mobilized a lot of their students and brought a lot of issues to the forefront, and I applaud them for that. It's important that we, as a board, and even within our own schools, provide opportunities for this kind of clear feedback, cooperation with the students, and allowing them to help shape and inform where we are with curriculum and what we're teaching. I also would think it's important that we recognize some of the changes that are happening in society and recognize that what we teach and how we teach and who teaches our students makes a huge difference. I agree with a lot of what this group has put together, especially with the fact that we should have a lot of teachers and staff at school that come from diverse backgrounds that can relate to students. The reality is there's 109 different languages spoken in the homes of OPS families. 27.5% of K through 5 students are English language learners. There is a lot of diversity in our district, and we should do more to celebrate that diversity and expose that to all students in OPS. And again, I'm grateful for those students that have gotten together over the summer and have done this important work, and they're really building a movement, and I think it's great.
Thank you. Nick Thielen.
Yeah, so I was there when those students spoke, and I was there the day or two before when they spoke out in front of Central High School. They made powerful arguments, and we need to listen to our youth. They're smart, and they've got important contributions to make to this conversation. And what I tell them is this: look, this all starts by acknowledging where we have problems and sort of the ability of and looking back at it and saying that we've got to directly address some of the barriers that students of color in particular are facing in our schools. We need more Black teachers and counselors. We need, as the State Board of Education has already begun to do, we need to take a serious look at curriculum to ensure that we're accurately telling the history of our country and our community, its triumphs and its failures. We need to make sure that we aren't excluding the contributions of people of color simply because their contributions have been forgotten or ignored, sometimes because of blatant racism. And we need to make sure that people of color that have lived experience with these issues are at the table to help make these decisions. But I certainly I reached out to these kids. They like I said, they were making powerful arguments and doing smart advocacy. And I'd certainly welcome their voice as we move forward.
Thank you. Question 3. Safety is an issue in our schools, but some suggest that the presence of police officers in schools leads to criminalization of student behavior and targets students of color. Do you agree or disagree, and what would you do about it? The first candidate to begin this would be Nick Thielen.
You know, there's a lot to it. First of all, the general point is we need to have a learning community where everyone can focus on the common goal of helping students learn and grow, right? And that starts with reasonable workloads for teachers and class sizes that allow, mutual respect between teachers and students. We need trauma-informed practices that help understand the catalyst behind behaviors instead of simply dispensing punishment. Directly to the issue of police in the schools, OPS has a policy that says that tried to address this a couple of years ago that said, we won't refer things to student resource officers unless they meet a certain threshold. When we look at the data, that hasn't been the case. We haven't lived up to that. So we have to recommit to that and figure out why. And we need to make sure that we aren't criminalizing just regular juvenile behavior. And absolutely, the data shows that it's it's affecting students of color more than other students. I think that's the same reason that I'm opposed to LB 147. I think that those types of encouraging of teachers to use force disproportionately impact students of color, and we shouldn't be encouraging those types of things. We really need to look at what's going on with these students and help them. And we, as a community, we have to support their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex P. Gates.
Thanks. So I understand the school to prison pipeline, and it's a real thing. And it's something that we need to be aware of and we need to work to improve. That being said, I've spoken to a lot of principals in OPS and at high school levels, and all of them have spoken very fondly about their SROs. Now, I understand not all SROs are the same, but they've spoken very fondly about what role they serve. And the reality is, it's not like the SROs are just kind of standing around being scary armed police officers with weapons. I mean, they're providing mental health resources, they're providing camaraderie, they're providing a connection to some students that sometimes administrators or teachers aren't able to make. I would say that until, before we can say, look, let's get rid of SROs in our buildings, we need to be sure that we have the proper mental health. We need to make sure that we have all sorts of guidance resources for students to fill kind of those roles that these SROs are filling now. But like I said, we need to make sure that we find the right people for this job. And this is an opportunity for students to find and make deep, good connections with people who come from a law enforcement background. But it's really paramount to find the right folks to do this. And like I said, in many of the schools I've chatted with principals, they speak very fondly. The students know the SROs by their first names, but of course, I know that's not all the experiences across the board.
Thank you. Question 4, do you feel that the funding for OPS is adequate? Alex P. Gates, you may begin.
Well, no, I don't think funding for public education in general is adequate. And I mean, this isn't an issue that's unique to Omaha at all. Unfortunately, we rely on property taxes a lot. I think last time I checked, I think we were 48th out of 50 in terms of reliance on property taxes to fund our public schools. That's a much larger philosophical conversation to have in terms of where we prioritize things in our country and our society. I think we could be smart about how we allocate the large amount of money that we do spend. but I don't want any sort of talk to come on the backs of teachers or into the classrooms. I think there's a difference, and I think opportunities for us to be smart about things that we can do to be mindful with the budget, because that's what we have to be. But no, in general, we as a society, I believe, should have a greater elevate public schools to something more, and make efforts to really properly fund them. The pandemic has really shown us how much we rely on public schools, right? From everything related to proper nutrition to, so many of these things kind of fall right into public schools, and especially on teachers' backs. So no, I think we should do more, and I think we can do more, but I also think we can be smarter about how we're spending the money that we have.
Thank you. Nick Thielen?
Yeah, I mean, Alex is completely right on this. There's no way that we are getting the resources that we need to adequately fund give a high quality education to all the students that we have. The ability of education, including high quality early education, to start leveling the playing field, is one of the reasons I'm running for school board. And so I think we have to, if we're going to take equity and our education system and our the sort of our national narrative about hard work and opportunities being out there. If we're going to take that seriously, that starts with making sure we have equal access to quality education, and we have to put the resources behind it. But I also think that there are smart ways to use the resources we have, and that's like I said, with the early childhood education has lifelong. The research shows it has lifelong effects. Including academic effects going right into first grade, and third grade reading levels, all the way to less likelihood of being involved with the criminal justice system at age 17. We also should be just looking at research-based practices to make sure that we're doing the most with the money that we have, and that we're getting the best methods and curriculum for the students. And getting the most we can out of our resources. So that's how Mississippi has, consistently shown top gains in national assessment scores for reading the math over the last decade. While most other states have stagnated. They looked at research-based practices.
Thank you. Moving on to question 5. For the families in your district, what do you think are the top 2 issues? Nick Thielen, you may begin.
The top issue always is educational outcomes. OPS has exceptional educational opportunities. Every year we have national merit finalists and scholarship winners and people that go off to prestigious colleges and that do really great things. But it's clear that not every student is able to thrive in their education. On our state report card, I think it was 30% of students were only 30% of students were proficient in math, 33% in language arts, 43% in science. So we have room for improvement on educational outcomes, and that's what I think parents are always going to be the most concerned with. The superintendent has already taken great steps in the strategic plan by reinforcing and sort of refocusing on efforts on third grade reading levels. That's, it's getting back down to basics. And then in addition, we have, we have to evaluate our teaching methods and really look at those research-based practices. I think those, again, outcomes are really the most important thing. And then second is communication. And the district has to communicate with parents on issues related to changes in their schools and schedules and COVID procedures and, and back to school and all these things. There's a lot going on, but communication is really key. And they need also, I've talked to a lot of parents that have faced challenges with communication about their student and what's going on with their student at school. And especially with students with special needs and IEPs, students have to get, or parents have to get that communication.
Thank you. Question 6. Oh, I'm so sorry. Moving on to Alex P. Gates. My apologies.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. Well, this is a great question, and I struggled to find a top 2, but I'm going to try. I think the one thing is, with a district of 54,000 students, we're big, and we serve a lot of students, and we have challenges all across the city. I think voters in my district are really concerned about maybe a one-size-fits-all approach to education. I think sometimes when you deal with a big district like ours, and you have the challenges that we face, we sometimes look at maybe trying to simplify things by making sweeping changes across the board. One example would be, whether or not to have sixth grade included in middle school, or allow sixth grade to remain in some elementary schools. And I think this is on the mind of a lot of the voters in my sub-district. Another thing is, finding the balance between innovation and excellence. We've got some really fantastic schools, a lot of in OPS, and we're proud of really what every school can do. And there's a lot of folks that are in my district that, are living there because they're fourth, fifth, or sixth generation at their particular school. And they want to preserve that excellence. And they also want to be able to have innovation as well. I talked a lot about one-to-one technology in 2016. I talk a lot about that now as we're kind of catapulted into this. But being innovative with what we're doing and being able to keep up with some of the neighboring districts that are maybe can be smaller and more nimble, I think is important as well.
Thank you. Kathy, do we have time for a sixth question?
I think we can, and we may have to adjust the final closing arguments, but I think we've got time for one more.
Awesome. So question number 6 is, do you feel the pension issues in OPS has been properly addressed? And what would you do about the pension fund?
I start, I'm assuming. Yeah. We all followed along on the World Herald articles, and they were very long. So having 90 seconds to answer this question, I think is a challenge. I see that, as a district is moving toward, doing the study to move OSER's management under IMPERS is kind of the latest thing that we're dealing with. And along with that are some questions about how we integrate that, the cost associated with that, and the technology. I think they said in the World Herald article today, it was between $4 and $6 million that was talked about in terms of the technology cost to integrate this system. And as a board member with my technology background, I mean, I would be equipped to be able to ask the right questions to really understand what that means and how that would actually work. A lot of the fix for this, I know, depends on the economy, and given everything around us, there's a lot of uncertainties there. But I absolutely support, meeting all of our pension obligations, making those ARC payments, and doing everything that we can, and if we have to make some cuts, continued cuts, and do those kinds of things, keeping them as far away from the classroom as possible. It's a big challenge, and something that is definitely, a lot of people can talk about this for a long time, a lot longer than 90 seconds, but I think we're on the right track, and I'm happy to see the work that we've done.
Thank you. Nick Thielen?
Yeah, so I think, the OSERS board and what was going on with the pension fund is one of the things that caught my eye about the school board and really started making me pay attention to what was going on with the school board. And this comes down again to, board governance and oversight. So the board knowing its role and understanding its oversight responsibilities. And this is a place where, we drop the ball. And so one of the things, as an attorney and as somebody that's experienced in nonprofit boards and corporate governance, this is something that I think is really important to bring to the board, is this oversight mindset of making sure that things are going as planned and that we're following the procedures that we have. And as far as whether we're on the right track with where OSERS is now, I think it's largely on this is a good move, right? It's very unusual for a public school district to be in charge of its own retirement system, and the state of Nebraska's retirement board is certainly capable of handling these issues for us. I think over the long run, it will save money, not just those direct costs that we've seen sort of in the paper, but also there's a lot of costs, sort of overhead costs that OPS as a district takes on. So I think the savings will be there. But overall, I think that it's not inappropriate for the state to be taking over the investment part of the retirement fund.
Thank you. So now we will be moving into closing statements. And Nick Thielen, you may proceed.
So growing up, I often spent time with my grandmother. She was a public school teacher for 30 years. She made a big impression on the decades of students that she taught. She also made a big impression on me. So she encouraged me to read, to do well in school, and ultimately to follow in her footsteps as the second person in her family after her to graduate from college. There was also a middle school teacher, Mr. Lensman, that pulled me aside after class one day to tell me that he had noticed that my work was slipping, that he was concerned, that he knew I could do better, and that he hoped that I would try. And that made a big impression too. So I know the difference that a good education and good educators can make. Just briefly, sort of three primary goals for my time on the board. So first, again, with my background as an attorney and in corporate and nonprofit governance, I'll bring this governance mindset to the board. And that means understanding the nuance of the board's role and letting the superintendent run the day-to-day and focusing on that strategic guidance and oversight. Second, I want to make sure we have what it takes to retain and support our wonderful teachers so that every kid has a Miss Thielen or a Mr. Lensman helping to guide their way. And third, I want OPS to make smart investments for our children and our community. And that means, again, early childhood education programs that will pay dividends for life. It means career readiness programs that provide marketable skills to students that want to start their career right after graduating. And it means recognizing the hurdles that kids face outside the classroom that keep them from showing up or focusing on their work while they're in the classroom. So an excellent, relevant education is the promise that we've made through our public education system. And I want to make sure our Board of Education has the tools it needs and the leadership our students deserve to live up to that promise.
Thank you. Alex P. Gates.
Thank you. And thanks again for this opportunity. Look, I'm a PTA dad and I'm not a politician. I'm deeply invested in OPS. I think voters in Subdistrict 3 deserve to be represented by somebody whose kids sit next to them in the lunchroom, who maybe had a kid get passed by at a bus stop, who knows what it's like if there's a low lunch account balance. I'm familiar with INSCAS testing and MAP testing and parent-teacher conferences. And as a parent of students in all levels of OPS, elementary, middle school, and high school, I get all the texts, I get all the emails. I've been involved for a long, long time. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to take my experience as an involved parent to the board. But in addition to that, given what we're dealing with now, my background in technology, I think will provide tremendous asset to the board as we evaluate technology for our return to school, how we utilize this investment that we've made with the iPads, and now that we are a one-to-one district, how we continue with that. So really bringing that to the board in my technology background, I think, I think it's a silver lining to everything that's going on. I really think I can help make a difference. Now, this isn't about politics for me. It's not a stepping stone to higher office. I'm not doing this to hobnob and Lincoln. I'm not doing this to hand out checks from special interests for political favors. That's not what I'm about. I'm about taking my experience as an active parent and a technology entrepreneur and doing my best to help the board. I understand that thriving communities are built on top of strong public schools, and that's why I'm running. I am all in on OPS, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our forum for OPS District 3. The League thanks all of the candidates for participating. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Candid Villard, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues here in our city and its candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.